And we're live. Hey.
Hello, Stuart. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Christelle.
Yeah, and this week we have the amazing Stuart Turnbull of This Is Wednesday Twitter Space fame. So, and I also know you're a writer as well. So, let's start off with the normal introductory question. Who is Stuart Turnbull, and what is a Twitter Space?
I am Stuart Turnbull, as far as I'm aware. I've not come across any paperwork to indicate otherwise, nor any hidden switches behind my ear or at the base of my neck to suggest that I'm actually an AI. So that's me. I'm in my mid-40s, married with 3 kids. Older now though. My youngest is 16, so that's getting on a little bit. So that's my stuff out the way. Twitter Spaces, they are great. They are live audio on Twitter. So if you have access to Twitter on your phone, on an Apple or an Android phone, then you can access them. I believe you can actually access them from desktops as well now.
Oh.
And you can hear people having conversation. In fact, on the phones, you can join in with the conversations. So I always say they're a lot like radio. You know, people are really loving podcasts more and more recently. And that's great because a podcast is prepared and it comes out to you. And some people do it off the cuff, and some people prepare the whole series in advance. But what I love about a space is it's very much like live radio. You have that live interaction, but you can also, instead of just being able to listen to it, you can have people come from the audience and sharing it with you.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a conversation. Oh, do you specifically have subjects that you talk about? Do you have specific subjects you're mostly interested in talking about, Stuart?
For myself, for the space I run on a weekly basis, This Is Wednesday space, I do it as an interview. So it's very much going to depend on what the person I'm interviewing does. So for example, last week, I was talking with a gentleman who is executive officer of a historical place in Connecticut, the Shaw Mansion. And it was fantastic. His knowledge of the property, of the history of not just the property, but the area. It's ties that go all the way back to the very founding of America was fascinating. And that's what the discussion was on. This week, I'm going to be discussing the career of someone who's Irish, who played football professionally and now does fitness and health training, and had an extremely interesting program of accessing free fruit for children. You notice I had to make sure my teeth were in properly to say that. So yes, mine are a half-hour interview, one-to-one with the person I'm interviewing, and then we open it up for questions from listeners. So that can often jump the discussion off in interesting ways.
So, this is a question that maybe nobody else would ask you, but why did you choose Twitter Spaces? I mean, why didn't you do like a live show like this, or have some sort of Twitter chat, textual Twitter chat? What appealed to you about Twitter Spaces, and why did you jump in to start this show really quite early in what is Twitter Spaces?
Yeah, it probably just came at the right time.
Yeah.
So I think Twitter Spaces launched December, round about then, and it was March when I first heard about it and applied for it. So I think my first was towards the end of March, and it literally did come at just the right time. There had been another social audio app that I'd looked at and signed up for. I think the app's still on my phone.
Yeah.
But what I liked about Twitter is I was already a heavy Twitter user, and it felt very integrated. Instead of having to migrate to something else and try and attract, learn a new program or a new system and then attract, I was dealing with something I already knew, and it allowed for an organic growth.
It sounds interesting, and it's been related to Clubhouse. Have you tried Clubhouse at all? And why did you choose Twitter Spaces over Clubhouse?
Yeah, I've not tried Clubhouse.
Okay.
I think initially Clubhouse was only available on Android,
Yes.
and I'm an iOS user, so
Okay.
there was that. And by the time it became available, I was already set on using Spaces. And this is going to stereotype me, but I'm heading toward middle-aged. I don't want to be chopping and changing to a new app every 2 minutes. And I know there are some people who very successfully use both.
Yeah.
But I felt that for myself, it would be better to concentrate the time and energy I do have on just cultivating the one.
So, like, for people who have never used a Twitter space, how do you control like who can speak and what kind of controls are there in the system to make sure that it doesn't turn into a load of people shouting at each other for 20 minutes?
And indeed, some spaces do get like that. Some I've been in some, and it is just people talking over it, very friendly, and quite a riot. It's like being at a party. I have heard of others. I've not been involved in any where it becomes a little more tense. But as a host, I do have controls. So first of all, I can limit who gets to speak.
Yeah.
There's also at this point a limit of only 10 people in total can be speaking. And what is it? 10 and 3 hosts, so 13. Which does give it if you have all of those up, you can have it almost feeling a little like maybe a dinner party chat.
Yeah.
But above that, as host, you can mute people, and if they choose not to be polite, you can remove them from speaking. People don't automatically have the right to come and speak. You can set the room so that it's you and whoever joins first gets to speak. Or you can set the room so it's just you and people you're already friends with who can talk with you. Or, and this is what I do on a Wednesday, it's just you and whoever you invite. So that, like I said, for the interview, it's only myself and the person I'm speaking to who's available to talk. So that, there are controls, and you can very quickly silence and remove someone if they become boisterous or try to take over the room.
Yeah. Who are some people that you might want to interview? What subjects are you looking for?
Well, I've had 2 astrophysicists.
Oh, wow.
And I will always take an astrophysicist. I'm a sucker for astrophysics. Especially with the eruption that's going on in Las Palmas at the moment, I would love a geologist on. But what I'm looking for is things that are interesting, people that are interesting. And my wife and I were talking about this. It's one of the things I need to work on. I have Aspergers. So very, very much and very often I'm caught up on the subject and not necessarily the person. And my wife says that's something I need to be aware of and try and work on. But saying that, I had Jane Byrne on a couple of months ago, and Jane specializes. She had a dance studio. She has a little shop that sells clothing and for dancers, but she's also highly trained in ballet shoe fitting, and the type of ballet shoe fitting she does, when she's finished her course, which may or may not have happened by now, I can't remember exactly when, she will be one of only 2 people in the world with this qualification.
Wow. Okay.
So that is something you don't normally get to hear about, things like that. And my relationship to dancing is I watch Strictly Ballroom. you know, and I don't even watch that. That's Dancing with the Stars for American markets.
Uh-huh.
I don't even watch that every week.
Yeah.
I know the words Paso Doble, but that's about it. But it was utterly fascinating to be discussing the intricacies of fitting a ballet shoe to make sure that the person who's receiving it is not going to be wearing something that's going to end up doing them long-term damage.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that, you know, yes, I love to talk about black holes and quasars and matter and antimatter and dark matter, but I'm equally as happy to chat about dance shoes. Or last week, the chat about Show Mansion was terrific. So yes, I'll talk about anything so long as there's something that my tagline is interesting, expert, and not professional, something else. My mind has gone blank there.
Astrophysics fascinates me. I would want to listen in on something like this, and I would have a million questions just because it is so interesting to me. So why are you so interested in astrophysics? I'm very curious.
It's just fascinating.
It's fascinating. I know. It's.
I mean, let's take our sun. So you have if you took a pinhead of the a part of our sun, and if you took a pinhead of its core and placed it where I am,
Yeah.
To be at a safe distance, I would need to be 90 miles away. So for me, that's from here to Cardiff. That a pinhead, and that is just this roiling massive fusion that's keeping us warm. You know, the light that we're getting is a tiny fraction of the light of the energy that the sun puts out, and yet it provides for life. And then you do some reading and you discover that there are suns that are as big as our solar system.
Yeah.
And that, you know, like, wow. Or you read about the way that black holes bend light around them, and you have this, we're getting more and more pictures coming now of gravitational lensing, where you see a ring of light around a part of in space, and what you go is, well, there's a huge big star behind that, but what's blocking it coming through straight through is the fact there's a jolly big black hole that we can't see. And
no, I'm like you. So black holes fascinate me, and nobody seems to actually know what they are. I mean, other than a star explodes. And you tell me, what is a black hole? See, I'm going to be here all day. Tim, how long do we have?
I can see this falling into a black hole of...
See, what we need here is someone like Eloise Stevance, who I interviewed, or Sophia Gadnazar, who was the other astrophysicist that I interviewed. But black hole, so it explodes, and then under some conditions, it's heavy enough to fall back in on itself. And if it falls far enough, it creates such a dense gravitational well that light can't escape from it, and so it slowly, drags light and surrounding matter into it.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to have to steal some of your guests. I think Kirsten Alana was. I met her because she came on to May King's Twitter space, because she'd been on your Twitter space.
Yes.
So we've stolen her already as a guest. So maybe we need to find somebody astrophysicists, and then maybe we can shove some people your way.
maybe we need a panel, because I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a bit more involved. Okay, so in the pre-chat, you mentioned that you've got is it series of short stories or one?
No, it's a collection of short stories. Okay. So Moons, Myths and Monsters comes out on Friday on Kindle.
Yeah.
And this is a collection of 30 short stories that I've written over the past probably 10 years. Some of them have been published, some of them haven't.
Yeah.
But yes, I did put some out a couple of years ago, and I was never happy with the formatting. So I took them down with the intention of blitzing through and redoing it. And that was about 18 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But yes, I got it done. It's ready to hit. So yes, that goes live on the 1st.
On the 1st.
Are there any particular genre, or I mean, I'm kind of thinking it might have something to do with astrology or something to do with that kind of thing, or is it?
Yeah, no astrology, but yes, certainly. This is a collection of fiction, science fiction, speculative fiction, some weird westerns, some steampunk. Yes, that's
sci-fi. I didn't mean astrology.
I didn't think you did, but I didn't want anyone wanting, to roll up and read it and going, well, it's not telling me what Taurus is doing this month.
Yeah.
What influenced these books?
Some of them have a very clear influence. I have one that actually has been published called G4.alpha, and it's about someone in a far future, what was India, after a far past an apocalyptic setting.
Yeah.
And they find the remains of a giant robot, a semi-autonomous battle machine. I think I call it in this story. And the end of it is a direct callback to a well-known science fiction story, which I hadn't called. Now I can't remember if the name is "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream," or if that's just the end of it. But that literally the end of the story recalls that, but in a flipped sense. Others, they've come maybe from things I've read. I've got one about hornets, and the venom from hornet sting can be used to activate transmitters in the brain.
Yeah.
There's a chemical in there that can be used for that. So I've used it in the story in a bit more gruesome way. There's another one with bees, and I didn't know that apitoxin in bee venom is useful for people with Lyme disease.
Oh.
So some of them, maybe it came from a prompt, or something I read, and I just developed it into a story.
That's fascinating. Where can we find your short stories online if we're wanting to go purchase one?
Well, the ones that are available online, the details are in the book. So I've made sure to credit the people who published them first. They're all back. The rights to republish are back to me, and the collection itself will be, as I said, available on Kindle. From Friday, and there will be a link on my Twitter account.
Oh, good.
And is that under Stuart Turnbull?
It is, yes.
You haven't got some weird. I mean, I always thought that I should have I've published some books under Timothy Michael Lewis, which is easy to find, but nobody types that in. And I've got one under Tim Lewis, which people can find, but then they find about 15 other books by other Tim Lewises. So it's always an issue with all of them.
I did used to write under Clive Turn, and most of the ones that were published have been published under the name Clive Turn. But part of taking the book off of Kindle previously and revamping it was I wanted to go back to using my name, so that's what I'm doing. So no strange pseudonyms.
Costin de Bargos or something. So let's talk a little bit about Asperger's is what your condition. That's a terrible way of pronouncing it. I'm not very good at this sort of stuff myself. But was that something that you were diagnosed with when you were young? Was that something you've been diagnosed with later? Because I'm from a similar kind of generation, and it wasn't really something that was talked about at all, or no.
Well,
in the past in the UK?
Dr. Asperger didn't really formulate a diagnosis until I'm sure it's Dr. Hans Asperger, until the late 70s, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't really, when I was at school in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't something that was really known about.
Yeah.
But my son was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And when we got the diagnosis and were sat reading through, my wife kept going, "Oh, look, that's you as well." Yes, that's you as well.
Yeah.
So, I went and I got an official diagnosis, and they said, "Look, do you really want one? What's it?" And I said, "Well, I think for my peace of mind, yes, I'd like to know why all these years of being weird have a reason that I'm not just weird, but there is my brain is made in a different way, and that's for myself. It was useful."
I noticed on your Twitter bio that you mentioned ADHD, which is something that I'm also diagnosed with ADHD. And you said my brain is weird, but for me, it was having a diagnosis explained some of my quirkiness.
Yeah.
And as rad as that might be, there's sometimes a reason behind quirkiness that we don't even realize. And, it sounds like we're the same age. We're a similar age. So growing up in the 80s and 90s, ADHD, Asperger's, autism was just not understood yet. And so to be a quirky person, which I'll redefine that as super rad, wasn't understood. So, growing up in the 80s, and I remember my parents having all kinds of meetings with teachers and not really understanding why I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience a little bit in that.
So having the ADHD and the being on the autistic spectrum, because Asperger's is on the autistic spectrum, they're not complementary.
Yeah.
Kind of battle against each other or pull against each other in different ways. And fortunately, that my the ADHD side very much channeled into doing activities. So I was always restless, and I was always told, "Could you please sit still?" But fortunately, if I was in class, and especially if it was a topic I was connected to, the Asperger side allowed me to lock in. But come break time, if there was a sports club, then that's what I went and did. I played football, I played cricket, I played rugby. I ran. I hate running. I ran because that allowed all that energy to go. So I think my parents, even though these things weren't understood, they were very good at helping me to build controls that I needed to understand that just saying exactly what's on the tip of your tongue at all times is not best. And it's, sometimes a lot better just to keep that quiet. And that, yes, you can run about, but sometimes it's not time to run about. And from very early, they helped me to build controls that channeled that. And then I was very fortunate when I got together with my wife. She's been very good at helping me with the social awkwardness that comes with the Asperger's, with not being able to pick up on social cues, not being able to take those subtle signals that neurotypical people seem to understand automatically, and I don't know where they got that handbook from. So yes, it's a lifetime of learning and continual learning, and yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is Cornwall. You're based in Cornwall now,
I am,
and you're
yeah.
clearly not from Cornwall originally.
I'm not
So,
from Cornwall, no.
Can you tell us how you ended up in Cornwall as a person from Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Leamington Spa.
Oh, okay.
As my wife, quite often tells me, I'm not really Scottish.
Yeah.
And I point out that had I been born in a barn, that wouldn't have made me a horse either. So, but no, my we were let's see, right. I moved back to Scotland when I left home, early 20s. So my folks were in Shrewsbury in Shropshire at that point, and I went back to Edinburgh because Edinburgh was the home of my heart, I call it.
Yeah.
And then I met my wife. We got married, and we moved to the kingdom across the water, and we were in Fife, and then we moved up to Crieff, in Perthshire, which is beautiful, lovely part, right at the step of the Highlands. If for people who like golf, it's just a few miles from where the famous Gleneagles golf course is, and it's just a lovely area. And we were there 10 years, but the house we were in was no longer doing what we needed it to do as a family, so we were looking for other things, and nothing was really coming up that was suitable, that we liked. And the situation was, I'd been made redundant, and my wife's health had then crashed about 6 months later. She has a condition called Ehlers-Danlos. Her body doesn't produce enough collagen. And basically her body gave up and said, look, you've been doing too much. And she spent the better part of 2 years confined to bed. So officially now I'm her carer.
Yeah.
So the situation was, we were homeschooling. I didn't have a job that I had to leave. And my wife said, what about Cornwall? Because she's always loved Cornwall.
Yeah.
We came on honeymoon to Cornwall. We'd been down to Cornwall for the a couple of years on the run for holiday. And so we looked, and we found somewhere, and we moved down. And that's how we came to be in Cornwall. And what is the great... Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to put an aside for American viewers. That's kind of like moving from Florida to Alaska. Kind of.
I mean...
well, not really in terms of climate, I suppose.
No, it's about 500 miles.
Yeah.
So from where we were, I think it's 560 miles. So that's
so it's one corner to the other corner.
But yes, but one of the advantages is yes, moving that bit further south, the temperature just rises. Every 100 miles you go, you're getting sort of 5 or 6 degrees of heat extra. And that's good for my wife's condition.
Yeah.
So that has been a good benefit. She has been more active because it's warmer more of the year.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural difference. Is that what you say? Or is it a climate difference?
It's not a huge cultural difference. There are cultural differences. Scotland is different, but then the north of England is different to the south of England.
Yeah.
If you go to the Midlands, that's different to London. Geographically within Scotland, within Britain, because it's such a crowded nation, and that has risen from distinct backgrounds, there are quite not stark, but when you dig down, there are differences. I mean, being in Cornwall is probably more like being in Scotland than it is being in Kent.
Yeah.
Because Cornwall is one of the Celtic nations, really.
Okay.
It could easily be a little separate bit by itself, and there are people who campaign for that. But it's still Britain. We still use, the pound. We still drive on the same roads in the same way, and buy mostly the same things in the shops here that I did in Scotland. There are regional differences.
Yeah.
But I mean, because I've lived all over Britain, maybe I don't feel it as much as maybe someone who'd only ever lived in one place.
Yeah.
They would feel a stronger culture difference. But for myself, it's just another part of Britain that I've lived in, and yeah.
And the Cornish pasties are going to be better, I guess, in Cornwall than in Scotland.
Yes, but it's harder to get a good mince pie down here.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose.
That's on my list, by the way. So, okay, so let me ask this final question, if you're okay with that, Tim. Like the second to last final. So, I am coming to the UK very soon, and on my list of foods to try are, I think what you call pasties, but are those pies?
Pasties.
Pasties. Okay.
Yeah.
What do I need to try? What do I need to try this? What kind do I need to try?
Okay. Whereabouts in the UK are you going?
Well, I'm landing in London. I'll be there just for a day, but I'm going up to the northeast.
Okay. So northeast, let's see, is it barm cakes up there? You know that there are, in much the same way, I wouldn't fly into New York and expect to get the best barbecue.
Yeah.
I would go to Texas and expect to get a good deep pan. Well, there's no such thing as a good deep pan pizza. That's Chicago's just wrong. But you know, you what I would suggest is look for the local things. Ask, you know, for a proper local delicacy. You'll be able to get a pasty in the supermarket. You'll be able to get a mince pie in there. You know, certainly up in the northeast, I would imagine you'd be able to get one easier.
So every region has their own specialty.
There are,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really necessarily. Well, there's this Cornish pie pasty company that has places in London, which is it's better than a supermarket bought one, but there isn't really anything like actually buying a pasty in Cornwall.
No, we've got a little place literally just up outside the village.
So this is Cornwall specialty. Is this? This is
yes.
And
it's an old miner's food. So it was traditionally you have this big thick crust on one edge, crimped crust, and they would be able to carry this down into the mine. And then that bit of the crust you're not going to eat because it's going to be covered in whatever coal dust and the like. But inside this pastry case, you've got meat, you've got veg, you've got the protein that you need to get you through your working day, and that's where it originates. Yes.
Okay, that was my question. So, but let me ask this: fish and chips, however, is nationwide.
Yes, fish and chips is nationwide.
I've got opinions on fish and chips. I don't know. It's like it varies tremendously. First thing is never buy fish and chips from a place that sells kebabs because it tends to be
absolutely
like that, and anything that serves like small American style French fries with it isn't a proper fish and chip place.
No.
And the nearer you can get to a coast, usually the better the fish and chips. So somewhere actually in Hartlepool, you probably will get really good fish and chips because it's I think there's fishing or Grimsby around there. So don't get them in like a pub in London or something. Get them from a fish and chip shop in Hartlepool.
What to do is to look for where the people are queuing up, because you're coming over at the time of year. They're not going to be tourists. They're going to be the people who live there. So look for the ones that are busiest with the local people.
Yeah, and if it says kebab at the top, to avoid it.
Don't go. Okay.
However, they're not terrible one, but they're not. They never do proper fish and chips.
No, they don't do proper fish and chips. But have a kebab. That's a greasy night speciality. That is.
Yeah. Anyway, Stuart, can you tell us again, like when your Twitter Spaces, and also when your books are coming out and how people can find them?
Yes, certainly. So I'm just calling up my my guest list for tomorrow, so that I can plug the person I'm interviewing, because this week it was a bit of a short notice change.
Yeah.
The person I'd hoped to interview, I had to change at short notice. So I am interviewing someone called Richie. His Twitter handle is @FitnessFreakHQ.
Oh, okay.
And that's tomorrow evening British time. So it's 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and 10 p.m. UK time. And that's on Wednesday, this Twitter handle. So although you can get to it from Stuart Turnbull as well.
Yeah.
And then my book comes out on Wednesday. On Friday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing a Twitter space on my own account as a sort of launch for that as well. So people can come along and ask me anything about how I wrote them.
Yeah. And you can also find all that information by scanning the QR code that's down there.
Fantastic.
I put your Twitter account and also the one of This Is Wednesday, whatever it is the handle is there. I'll put a link to that. So, and if you let me know your book launch, I'll include it in the show notes as well. So.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being the guest this week.
No,
Stuart.
thank you for having me on. That's been fantastic. Thanks to yourself and Christelle.
We've had at least one person watching, and they put a like. They don't
Yay!
But I don't know on Twitter anymore because I haven't set it up properly at the moment to be able to see the Twitter account. So maybe millions of people watching on Twitter.
Yeah, that's what we'll assume.
So many questions for you, Stuart, from writing a book to astrophysics stuff, all the stuff that's interesting. Thank you for joining us. This was absolutely fascinating. And we will definitely stay in touch.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. That's been wonderful.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.